Welcome to Living Web Farms. We're a nonprofit organic research and education farm network. Organization oversees multi-species livestock, vegetables, greenhouses, soldier flies, bees, all kinds of projects here. We do workshops throughout the year, and if you haven't already seen the schedule, you should check it out online, livingwebfarms.org. We have things scheduled through next February, all kinds of great stuff. Tonight we're going to be talking about vegetable fermentation, which is really just a good excuse to talk about bacteria. So fermentation, just a quick definition, is a metabolic process. A metabolic process is a process by which one thing is converted to another thing by a living organism. And it can be done in several different ways. But fermentation itself is a metabolic process converting sugars into acids, gases, or alcohols. Humans have practiced fermentation of pretty much anything you can think of that's edible: vegetables, milk products, grains, and meats, for three main reasons: preserving the nutrients, flavoring the items, and vast nutritional benefits. And let me grab my notes really fast. There's a lot of things you eat every day that are fermented that you may not realize it. Coffee is a fermented product. The beans, once they're picked, are allowed to ferment in the sun for a few days to break up the pulp on the outside of the bean, and then the inner bean is removed for roasting. Tea, so green tea is unfermented leaves of the tea plant, but black and oolong teas the leaves have been fermented, so that's what produces the different tea flavors. Of course, wine and beer, our favorite fermented beverages. Yogurt, some sausages, breads, there's miso, tempeh, tofu, all kinds of things that you eat. So fermentation happens on a really large scale, and it also happens at home on a really small scale. And one of the things that is so great about it is that you can do anything you want, and as long as you can chop and punch things, you can pretty much ferment. So there's nothing fancy about it at all. So fermentation in food is controlled by microorganisms, mostly bacteria. And the primary bacteria that is responsible for fermentation is the lactobacilli, which is a group of bacteria in the genus Lactobacilli. You've heard of Lactobacillus acidophilus probably before. That's one example. What they are is a group of anaerobic bacteria, meaning they work in the absence of oxygen, and they convert sugars to either alcohol or lactic acid or both. They are everywhere. They're inside our bodies, they're inside the bodies of plants, they're on the outsides of plants, they're in the soil. You pretty much can't go anywhere without coming into contact with them, which is great. They form a symbiotic, meaning they work together with their host. And it's mutualistic, which means that they benefit and the host benefits. So lactobacilli in your body are helping you. You're helping them survive because you're providing a little incubator. And in the plant, the same thing happens. So why this matters and why it pertains to fermentation is because basically your body is host to over 100 trillion different bacteria, or really microorganisms, which is fascinating because that means that microorganisms in your body outnumber your cells 10 to 1. So if you thought your body belonged to you, you're wrong. And you couldn't survive without them. And there's research, pretty prolific research, but one of the most sort of advanced and comprehensive studies came out in the last couple years. Dr. Stephanie Seneff out of MIT, and some of you may have heard of this study, and if you haven't, you should look it up. She's been researching sulfur deficiencies, and she's also been researching autism for a really long time. And she found a correlation between Roundup or glyphosate and pretty much every single major Western disease. Autism, asthma, diabetes, heart disease, aggression, pretty much anything you can think of that Westerners suffer from constantly. And what she found is that it all had to do with the beneficial bacteria in the bodies of the people afflicted. If those bacteria's metabolic processes were disrupted or stopped, then it led to leaky gut syndrome. And you've heard of that before. And what that is those bacteria are unable to repair the intestinal tract, and toxins or allergens or anything that's in your gut, which is pretty much when people talk about your gut, they're talking about your entire gastrointestinal system. But toxins within that system can leak out into the bloodstream, and once they get into the bloodstream, they can get into your brain. So what's fascinating about all of this is that you can affect, through your diet and your environment, you can directly affect, I guess, the prevalence of these diseases in your life that sometimes seem unavoidable in our culture, right? Something that's really interesting, and I've been reading a lot about it in preparation for this class, is talking about and looking at what types of bacteria are inside of our bodies, and learning that there's actually 300 to 1,000 different species of microorganism living inside of you. Average about 500 different species. 99% of those are bacteria. The 1% is made up of fungi, protozoa, and archaea. So we're really talking about the bacteria here, and the lactobacilli are extremely prevalent. It's a good thing they're everywhere, and it's a good thing that you can get them through delicious things like vegetable ferments. Another thing that's really interesting that I've recently learned is that gut flora, as we call it, varies greatly from individual to individual. So yours is going to be pretty different from mine. But across my lifetime, the population that I establish of bacteria in my body and maintain is going to remain relatively the same. And I established that population mostly between birth and the age of 3. So this is really important, right? Because we see autism through the roof in young children, and we know now that it is coming from a disruption in what's called the shikimate pathway, which is a metabolic process that's used by plants and bacteria. So when the bacteria in the body can't do the shikimate pathway, they die, leads to leaky gut, leads to all these diseases. Look up Senef. Look up also Dr. Campbell McBride, Natasha Campbell McBride, if you've heard of gut and psychology syndrome. She's a neuroscientist who started looking into the relationship between what's in your gut and what's going on in your brain, because she discovered that her child had autism. And this was long before autism was so prevalent in society. And she basically fed her child off the autism spectrum. And most of it was through foods that boosted the probiotics and the beneficial bacteria in the child's intestinal system. The GAPS diet is what's based off her research. It's being used by people with Lyme's disease, cancer, AIDS, and they are not curing themselves, but they're living healthy, robust lives with these diseases. So this stuff is super important. The fossil record, and I just like blowing my own mind with bacteria facts, so I'm just gonna make you sit and listen to it for a minute. The fossil record suggests that every single life form on this earth originated from prokaryotes, which are single-celled organisms that have no cell nucleus. So all the things inside the cell and the main body are bouncing around. They also take in things from their environment to inform their evolution. So prokaryotes, bacteria, are our ancestors and our allies. That's the first quotation on the top of your handout. That's from Sander Katz. Very widely respected fermenter. If you're not familiar with his work, you should definitely look him up. Louis Pasteur, who is probably one of the reasons why we kill a lot of bacteria, also knew that in the end the microbes will have the last word. They're probably bacteria, I would say, the most important living organisms on the face of the earth, and a lot of people don't know it. They're in the soil, they make it possible for us to grow food, they make it possible for us to digest food. One other thing I'll mention about your gut flora before we talk about fermentation and what it does is there's this cool thing called the Human Microbiome Project. You should check it out. It's kind of like the Human Genome Project, these people trying to code all the DNA in humans all over the world. There's people trying to figure out what are all the bacteria inside of humans all over the world. And they have found that there's basically 3 different types of bacteriological makeup in humans. They're called enterotypes. If you take a living organism, if I take this beet leaf, and I look at its microbiological makeup, I define it as what's called an enterotype. There are 3 enterotypes of humans, and it's not discrete like blood type, but it is a spectrum, and based on what you eat and the environment that you find yourself in, you can be defined along this spectrum as either Prevotella, Bacteroides, or Ruminococcus. And what they found is through this research, if you eat a lot of carbs and sugars, you're going to be a Prevotella. If you eat a lot of high protein and fat, you're going to be Bacteroides. If you eat a lot of alcohol and polyunsaturated fat, you're Ruminococcus. So what this says to me is if our bodies are an ecosystem and we're looking for diversity, then we need to eat diversely, right? We need to eat as many things as we can. We need to introduce as many bacteria to our body as we can, beneficial. And we know that the way bacteria evolved, and we know that the way our immune systems organize themselves is by experience. So as many things as we can bring into our body that are healthy, so I don't ban anything from my diet. I eat everything. If it doesn't agree with me, I eat less of it, for sure, But I think it's a real argument for eating diversely. And there are several others, but we won't go into them because we're talking about bacteria. So let's talk about what the bacteria do in fermentation. So we know it preserves nutrients. If you buy a cabbage, when a cabbage is harvested, let's start there. When a cabbage is harvested, it immediately begins to lose nutrients. It travels to the farmer's market, it's lost some more. It goes from the farmer's market to your fridge, it's lost some more. If you let it sit in your fridge for a couple days, it's going to lose some more. And then when you cook it, it's going to lose some more. But how about as soon as you get it home, or as soon as you cut it out of your garden, you chop it up, mix it with some salt, crunch it up, make a brine. You're preserving all kinds of nutrients that you wouldn't be getting otherwise. So fermentation is great for that. It's not going to lose those vitamins and minerals. Fermentation also creates nutrients, they've found, that these lactobacilli can release. Nutrients including choline, which is important in memory and muscle control. It's an essential nutrient that you can't get from anywhere but your food. Niacin, also known as vitamin B3, created by lactobacilli. It's important for brain and skin health, DNA repair, adrenal function. It's also essential. You cannot get it from anywhere but outside of your body. Biotin, important for healthy skin, hair, and nails, neurological health. Thiamine, nervous system health, cardiovascular health, also essential. Folate, everyone's heard of that. Red blood cell generation, DNA repair, riboflavin, energy metabolism, fat metabolism, carbohydrate and protein metabolism. So we start to see how many things our bodies are going through just because these bacteria are present, and all the things they're releasing in the food and all the things they're creating in the brine that the food is in when they're fermenting. Lactobacilli is creating, releasing antioxidants. If you're not familiar with that term, an antioxidant is a molecule that can relate safely with a free radical. Free radical is a harmful molecule that has loose electrons, and if it goes into your body, it can bind to things that can't relate to it, like your cell walls, and cause damage. This is how we get leaky gut. This is how we get cancer. The more antioxidants you have in your system, the more you can bind up those free radicals and make them benign. Vitamin C, super duper important, is also produced by fermentation, and as everybody has heard, if you don't have vitamin C, you get scurvy and you die, right? And it's recorded that pirates and explorers were preventing their men from getting scurvy by eating sauerkraut. They were using ferments to do it. Vitamin C is also an antioxidant, so it's super duper important. Fermentation removes toxins from food. You've heard of nitrites being really high in leafy greens if they don't get enough sun. You've heard of oxalic acid in baby spinach, binding up calcium and magnesium in your body. They can break down those molecules during the fermentation process, the bacteria, to where it's rendered less harmful to you, if not completely benign. Nitrosamines, which are carcinogens that result from the breakdown of nitrites. Glucosides, benzene, phenols, they mimic hormones in your body. If you know about BPA, bisphenol A, the plastic, that's a phenol. What it does is mimic estrogen in your body. Not a good thing, right? It's not real estrogen. It's not doing any good. So this is just incredible, right? Like you listen to all this stuff and you're like thinking, wow, this bacteria is doing amazing things. So in your body, it's doing the same thing. It's these bacteria in your gut, they're taking in the food, and they can pre-digest in a sense. The fermentation process pre-digests things. In your body, the bacteria also release nutrients from the food that you couldn't get otherwise. A lot of people can't handle milk. The people who can, it's because they have bacteria in their gut that are processing that lactase. Phytic acid on beans and grains, bacteria in your body is what's going to help you process those things if they're not pre-digested or pre-fermented. Saponin on quinoa. I mean, you can name a bunch of different compounds that bacteria is able to handle. These bacteria train your immune system. They take through, it's called symbiogenesis. They take in harmful things in order to learn. That's how they do it. That's how they've evolved. And so everybody knows, like, if you get chicken pox, you're less likely to get it again. That's how your immune system learns. They regulate the repair of your intestinal tract so that you're not getting leaky gut, so that you're not getting, damaged cells. They produce vitamins, as we talked about. They also produce hormones that instruct your body's metabolic processes, like how to store fat, when not to store fat. So really, really, really amazing stuff. And I think we've pretty much covered it. But basically, maintenance of the bacteria in your gut is required because it's being assaulted at all times, Roundup is pretty much unavoidable, right? We think about how it's in food, it's in GMO grains. Farmers can't afford largely to feed non-GMO grains to their animals, and we could talk more about that at a different time, but it's really hard to find meat without GMO in it. Your kid wants you to roll down a grassy hill. You look at the hill, you're like, ooh, I bet that's chemical, What, are you not gonna roll down the hill? I'm gonna roll down the hill with my kid, I'm gonna hug the tree. I'm gonna hug my dog with the flea thing on him, you know what I mean? But all these things are coming into our bodies and we can't avoid all these toxins. But what we can do is make sure we have a really good army, right? So fermentation is probably one of the best, most affordable and quickest ways that you can do it. So what we're gonna do, and I don't know, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're rocking. So basically, what we're gonna do is just start chopping stuff up. I wanted to talk a little bit about, if you go to page 2, I was going to talk a little bit about equipment. It's real simple. You just need vessels, jars, crocks, buckets, gourds, intestines, like they did in the olden days, whatever you want to do. It's good to have a kitchen scale that's capable of weighing up to 5 pounds. More is better. This one does 100, although I can't get it to go to 0. It's brand new. Let's see, weights. Because lactobacilli are anaerobic, you want them to be in the brine. That's where they're going to work. So you want to weigh your vegetables down under your brine at all times. Some people boil rocks and use those, like people in Sudan. Some people use baggies full of more brine. Some people use jars full of brine or water, sealed tight. Anything, be creative, as long as it's clean, essentially. Salt, you don't want to use iodized salt because it kills the microbes. It's been through a chemical process. You really just kind of want to avoid any synthetic stuff. You need good water. Don't use overly chlorinated water because, as we know, the chlorine is added to the water to kill bacteria because bacteria is evil, right? We know that's not true. But yeah, don't use antibacterial soap, right? Like, stop. Breastfeed your kids, that kind of stuff. So if you have chlorinated water, you can boil it or you can get filtered water. Sometimes when I'm making up a brine, woo, look at all those fruit flies. Sometimes when I'm making a brine, I just put the salt in and I boil it together, and then I cool the brine, and that's what I use going forward. That way I know my water's good, I know my salt's dissolved, I'm ready to go. Cutting boards, mixing bowls, sharp knives, organic vegetables, and you can use whey, which is totally optional. Some people are scared of it, especially people who have some kind of milk intolerance. But one thing that I have found with a lot of people that I've taught in the past is that if you can't handle milk, you can handle cultured milk. You should try it because some people who can't handle regular milk can handle buttermilk, yogurt, kefir, all these kinds of things, and it's a really great addition to the diet. So if you can handle it, it's good. So we talked a little bit about brine. If you don't know what it is, it's basically water with salt dissolved throughout. It can be supplemented with herbs, wine, ground seeds, seaweed, whatever, but all you really need is salt. I think we talked about why you need it. It's a medium for the salt, but it provides the anaerobic environment for the bacteria. You can use just the juices of the vegetables themselves, which is what we're going to be doing tonight. You're just going to be punching a bunch of cabbage. It's going to be fun, and whatever you want. Whey, so this is a way of just like guaranteeing the introduction, which is silly. You can guarantee the introduction of lactobacilli into pretty much anything you put in the corner because it's going to be there. But people like to add this for quicker fermentation. I like to add it to things that are like pretty non-liquid, like pastes. But in general, I don't love the way vegetables taste when they're fermented with whey. I like to make it wild, as wild as possible. But I brought some of this, and you can make this easily. Just get yourself a quart of plain yogurt, strain it overnight. The stuff that strains out is your whey. The stuff that's left over is Greek yogurt. Put some herbs in it. Eat it like it is. Make tzatziki, whatever you want to do. You can also make cheese, right? Just a simple farmer's cheese, adding vinegar and sea salt to milk, heating it to 200 degrees, letting the curds separate from the whey, taking the curds out. There's your farmer's cheese. That's where this whey came from. Made a little bit of ricotta. So the general rules are make sure the vegetables are safe and organic to begin with. Make sure the brine always covers it. In general, 3 tablespoons of sea salt to each 5 pounds of veggies will make a great ferment. And that's the ratio, and I love to say this in all my cooking classes when I'm talking about meat or bread or whatever. Cooking is all about ratios. Once you figure out the ratios, you can do whatever you want. So use that. 3 tablespoons of sea salt to 5 pounds of vegetables or flours, if you want to use them, is going to make a great ferment. Make sure you close the jars tightly, or you can use an airlock jar like a Fido. I love these. Even if the brine's not covering it in these, I find that they do just fine. Sometimes you want to take it outside to open it if it's real bubbly, but these are going to be fine. And that's where I have some kimchi that I made some time ago. You're welcome to taste it. And I've got some chutney here that I made a couple days ago for everyone to taste. Woo, that's ripe. Trust your nose. Yeah. You could. I don't really like plastic, but you know, it's better to ferment in like a ceramic crock or glass. But
there's an adapter for the mason jars.
Oh, cool.
It sucks the air out.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because mason jars aren't exactly airtight. I don't know if everybody knows that. So sometimes you'll get, like, the first time I did a lacto ferment in a mason jar, I freaked out. So I was like, oh, there's something growing on the top of it, you know. But you just scrape it off. It's fine. Eat what's underneath. If it smells bad, don't eat it.
That's,
you know,
air got in and you got that.
because air got in, and so the bacteria that's working on the surface is aerobic bacteria, and that's what's creating the molds. The really dangerous stuff is also anaerobic, like lactobacilli. So the stuff on top that's growing in the presence of oxygen is not going to hurt you. It's just, I mean, you probably don't want to eat it, and you can, but you can just scrape it off, and what's underneath is fine. I've never gotten sick. You know, I've never known anyone to do this who's gotten sick, you know. When you get into meats and more advanced stuff like that's when you need to be really, really careful about botulism and salmonella. But for this, like, I think if you trust your nose, there's no need to be nervous. And things will go bad, you know, like we all mess up. But it's really, really fun, and you can do whatever you want. The cool thing about it is that anything can be fermented, anything that you can eat. So you can mix together whatever you want. You use your imagination. I was thinking we could just do one with flowers tonight, you know, if somebody wants to. We can go out in the garden, we can pick more. But I've laid out a bunch of stuff here for everyone to use. And I don't know about the scale. I might go downstairs and see if we can find another one so that you can weigh. I find in general that I can pack, and I like it pretty finely chopped. I can pack about 2 pounds of matter into a quart jar. And so that's what I have for the recipe here, the sauerkraut recipe, which I call the gateway ferment, because that's usually what people start with, and that's when you kind of realize that the sky's the limit. But you see the ratio, 2 pounds of cabbage or whatever vegetable matter to 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of sea salt. So I've taken that 3-to-5 ratio and adjusted it down for your quart-sized mason jar. So we have a smattering of things. There's probably a cabbage for everybody if you want to do like a basic kraut. There's turnips, there's borage, there's yarrow, there's calendula, bachelor button, onion flower, onion, beets, garlic scapes, cucumbers, broccoli, fennel, carrot tops. That's another thing about fermentation. I love to ferment things that I wouldn't eat just outright. Radish greens, carrot leaves, beet leaves. The beets are going to turn the ferment like a really yummy purple color, pink color. So yeah, you can do whatever you want. So if you have a knife, I hope that most people brought a knife. Who doesn't have a knife? Raise them high. 1, 2, 3. Oh, good. We might have enough. So what we'll do is just come up, be nice to each other, and get whatever you want, and chop it really as coarsely or as finely as you want, and get it in your bowl. And when you get it in your bowl, you're just going to start punching it, which is really fun. Yeah, you can wash it. Come up here. There's a few sinks. You don't have to wash it.
This goes with the sauerkraut, the veggies?
Yeah, sure.
And flour?
Sauerkraut, I mean, traditionally is just cabbage. So you can do just cabbage with salt, and you'll be good. If you want to get totally crazy and just make a random vegetable ferment, that's why I brought all this other stuff, so that people could just pick whatever they wanted. And then we'll just do some tasting, and we can talk as you go. People probably want to get going, huh? So we'll just get stuff and start chopping, and I'll talk about the vinegars and the kombucha and some of the other recipes as we go. And then if we have time, I'm going to make some mayonnaise. There's bowls of salt here, so you can take one for maybe every 4 people, and you should be good. That's going to get your jar. So you're going to take it for it. Did we end up just sharing your cabbage together? It's a big cabbage you can share. Chop it up as finely or coarsely as you like. Obviously, the finer it is, the more you can fit in there. Don't put it straight into the jar after you chop it. Put it in the bowl because you're going to want to punch it. Punch it down and release those juices.
Really, that kimchi, boy, that's strong.
It is strong. I like it strong. I eat it every morning for breakfast. So everyone should eat something fermented with every meal, right? For your gut. For your gut's sake. I'm dosing out some samples up here if anybody wants chutney or kimchi to taste.
Do you eat kimchi every morning?
I do. Kimchi and eggs is a delicious breakfast.
These are figs?
Yeah,
Fermented
fig, orange, ginger, mint.
Started out raw,
It was dried figs,
dried figs first.
orange. There's a recipe for it in your handout. Is it good? I haven't tried it. Is it good? Yeah, get yourself another pound of something.
Okay.
And some of y'all may be able to fit more than 2 pounds in your jar. It's just about how finely you chop it and how much you pack it in. You're all set.
I loved your kimchi.
Oh, good. Oh, right on. Yeah.
The right amount of heat.
You think so? I like to make it with a lot of garlic and ginger and spice.
Yeah.
Some people are like, oh, I can't handle this.
Garlic and ginger.
Yeah. I just like the way it tastes better when it's finer chopped, you know. But I mean, seems like it would ferment faster, you know. You guys say one thing you want to make sure you do before you start punching it, for if anyone's a particularly fast chopper, is you want to add your salt. The salt is going to help release the juices.
What's the weight that you're doing? My weight?
About 2 pounds of vegetable matter.
2 percentage. How much salt?
A tablespoon plus a teaspoon. Yeah.
And a teaspoon.
That's a chutney, fig chutney. And this is kimchi, if you want to try it. I just kind of want to start talking about vinegars and kombucha because I want us to have fun and stuff, and it's 7:15. So what you're going to take home with you in a little jar, there's favors. And it's what it is, it's a SCOBY or a mother for red wine vinegar and kombucha tea. And they're in little jelly jars with a little towel over the top of them. And you get to take one home with you. When you get it home, you're going to want to make kombucha and put the kombucha SCOBY, which is the white one. It's this bad boy. And this is like, this one right here, I think I have been growing for 5 years.
I thought that was like strips of bacon.
Nope, that's the mother. My ex-husband used to say, I think that thing's smiling at me when he would go in the room. But you can see, I'll pick it up. Every time it ferments, it forms a layer. So you can see every single time I have made a batch, you've got a layer in there. Isn't it beautiful? So what I did is I just tore off a piece of the mother here and gave it to you. The white one's going to be for your kombucha. The red one's for your red wine vinegar. The vinegar is real simple. All you got to do is just get a cheap bottle of red wine, pour it on top of that thing, let it sit for a month. Put a couple washcloths over top of it, secure it with a rubber band. You want to keep fruit flies out. If they lay their eggs in it, it's toast. You have to compost it and start over.
Use this.
That it doesn't like metal. Metal will kill it.
What about those other jars?
The Fido.
Yeah.
These are these really don't have any oxygen to them. This wants oxygen. So there is lactobacillus involved. And a lot of times you'll hear people call this mother a mushroom. It's not a mushroom. What it is acetic acid bacteria, acetobacter, combined with cellulose. And it's a cellulose body that's basically inhabited by acetobacter. What creates that acetic acid and acetic acid bacteria is lactobacilli. So it all originates with lactobacilli, and there's lactobacilli in this. But what makes the actual body is the acetobacter and the cellulose. You can, if you kill your mother for kombucha, which, you know, people do, if it dries out, it'll die. Certain herbs will kill it, certain, like bergamot, if you try to make it with Earl Grey tea, it'll die. So the best thing to do is just use black tea and green tea, or one or the other. And what you want to do is basically just make sweet tea. You need the sugar. I know people think, you know, sugar's evil, I don't want to put sugar on my tea. If you don't put sugar in it, the bacteria don't have anything to work on and nothing to ferment. You're going to render that sugar like it's not going to be sugar anymore when you're done. So it's not going to be harmful to your body, but the bacteria need it. I like to leave mine, basically just make sweet tea, cool it, pour it over the mother, cover it. I like to leave mine for at least 2 weeks, but I pour it off as I drink it. So it ferments over a space, you know what I mean? Like I'll start drinking it at 2 weeks, but I'll keep drinking it over the course of the next 2 weeks, and it just gets stronger and stronger. The longer you let it ferment, the more sour it gets, and it can taste. Put that in a gallon, because the bigger the jar, the bigger it'll grow. They like wide jars. They don't like tall, skinny jars. So I would say get yourself like a pickle jar, like a gallon pickle jar, or one of these gallon Fido jars. You can just take a pair of needle nose pliers, take this whole airlock member off, and be covering it with towels. And I would just start with a gallon, and you can even just fill it to half a gallon, and just watch that sucker grow, you know. The first one it'll make will look like a jellyfish. It'll just be like a film, you know. And then you taste it. If it tastes too sweet, let it sit longer. If it tastes fine or vinegary, you can take it, you know, put it in your fridge, make another batch, put it on top of the one you made before, and it'll grow another layer. The more you do it, the bigger it'll get. Give it to your friends, put it in the compost, you know, whatever. So to start a mother, go to the store, go to Green Life, go somewhere, get yourself a bottle of kombucha, and that has little floaters in the bottom. They can be threads. They have to be almost nothing. Go home, make yourself a batch of sweet tea, dump that bottle in there, cover it, and leave it alone. It'll grow a mother.
Where do you get it?
Just anywhere you buy like a bottled kombucha drink. A lot of them are pasteurized and they won't have the mother's bodies floating in them, but you can find them with the little bodies in the bottom. And because lactobacillus are ubiquitous, it's going to introduce, you know what I mean? With kombucha, it's just much easier to start with like a store-bought one, because with lactobacillus, you're not really sure what you're going to get, you know what I mean? So I think having like even just the tiniest membrane from a SCOBY in there is going to help you. And it's really easy to do. Like, I can't remember the brand. Like I wouldn't buy like an effervescent like Bucci product, but there's a brand. They have like colorful labels with like a lotus flower as the logo, and those I've used before to grow mothers. I try to buy the least like flavored one that I can, because a lot of times they're making the kombucha and then they're flavoring it after it's fermented. Because a lot of times fruit flavors and stuff can kill the bacteria. If you want to make apple cider vinegar, which is something that I do and I use a lot, get yourself a couple apples, chop them up, put a couple tablespoons of sugar in the bottom of a jar, put some water in it, cover that brother up, and just let it sit. It'll start to smell really bad. It'll start to smell like ethanol. And once it's done that, you're on the right track. Just leave it even longer, and eventually you'll start to grow a mother. You can pour unpasteurized apple cider or water in it, and just continue to grow the concentration, continue to grow the mother, and you'll eventually end up with apple cider vinegar. Or you can buy Bragg's apple cider vinegar, which is unfiltered, unpasteurized, and it usually has bits of mother in the bottom, and you can use that to start your own culture. Yeah. Yeah. You can also, I've taken a kombucha mother and thrown it in apple cider just to see what would happen. It took a little bit longer. It kind of turned to like ethanol first, and then it turned into apple cider vinegar, but it worked. I've tried to do white wine. It didn't work. I think it needs the tannins, you know, like in the in the tea and the wine, you know, to make it happen. I like to have 2 red wine vinegar ferments going all the time, so I can be pulling off of one and feeding the other because it takes a while. I make salad dressing out of it. I mean, I cook with it, and obviously, if you cook with it, you're killing some of the live culture. But it's still just way tastier than, you know, red wine vinegar at the store. And if you make like a raw salad dressing out of it, you're getting all that awesome live activity, you know, the bacteria. And if everybody's feeling like you can sit and watch a little bit longer, we can make some mayonnaise really fast, because I know some people wanted to do that. I made some salsa too. Y'all are welcome to try it. We have these little cups. I made ketchup and mustard. The recipes are in your handout. You will see how easy it is. Get yourself some whey for these guys, like the pasty things, because that's what's going to help it happen. The mustard, I made it really spicy. So if you're going to try it, just be careful. It's like, whew, really spicy. It's just the ground mustard, you know. And the more sweetener and the more water you add to the mustard is going to mellow out the mustard seed. So I just didn't add very much. Yeah, that's really pretty. Yeah, pack it in the jar. That's looking good.
This is good enough right there?
I think it's great. So, that's ketchup. You want a cracker or something?
No, good.
So what you're going to want to do when you get your ferment home is probably you're going to want to weigh it down so the vegetables stay under the brine. So get yourself like a Ziploc baggie, fill it with some salt water in case it leaks. If you feel like your ferment is too dry, after maybe 24 hours, you can make additional brine just by maybe like per cup of water, a tablespoon of sea salt, heat it up, let the salt dissolve, then cool it down and just pour it onto your ferment. Just want to make sure that the veggies are underneath the brine. If you feel like once you get it packed down in the jar, you're going to have enough to cover it, then you're good. Ultimately, whenever you're fermenting, you want the vegetables to be about 1 inch below the top of the jar. So if you've got it really, really full, you might want to either pack it tighter or take a little bit out and just eat it up. Yes, there is a bowl. So we're going to do mayonnaise, if anyone's interested. The recipe is the last one in your handout. Can you pass me that egg, sir? Thank you. And it's important for it to be at room temperature just because it's going to help you emulsify everything a little bit better. So don't get a spanking cold egg right out of your fridge. So I did a whole egg and an egg yolk. Room temperature. And then I'm going to do, I didn't have any Dijon mustard, but I have my favorite local mustard right here. It's too spicy. So I am putting in a teaspoon of mustard. I'm putting in lemon juice. And I put a recommendation of lemon juice on here. 1 to 1.5 teaspoons. But honestly, the things that make your mayonnaise taste the way you like it is going to be how much lemon juice you put in it and how much salt you put in it. So those are going to be the things that you adjust. I'm going to go for more, a little bit more. I am going to put in a tablespoon of whey, which is optional. If you make it with whey and then you leave it out on the counter overnight, it will last 2 months. If you make it without whey, it will last a week or 2.
Wow.
So,
Very cool.
yeah.
Yeah, leave it, but you have to put whey in it.
Unopened? Once you open it, don't you have to refrigerate it? I mean,
I leave it overnight with the whey on the counter, and then after that I refrigerate it. So really the key to making mayonnaise, it's obviously going to be your ratio of salt and lemon juice makes it taste good, but it's adding the oil really, 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 really slowly. Like so slowly that you think you might die. And what helps is if you have a food processor that has a little emulsification helper, which this doesn't go to this food processor, unfortunately, but this is what it looks like. It's a little tamper thing that you thought was just a tamper thing, and it has a pinhole in the bottom. Whoop. That's what you want. Because then you got this thing whirring, and you can just go ahead and pour your oil through. And I'm just going to stick this one in here and try to hold this down and try to pour. I know, it's got some funky thing in it. It's unfortunate that this is so loud because I'd like to talk to y'all while I'm doing it. But basically what I'm going to do is use this tool to pour the oil in very slowly through the hole, and it's going to emulsify throughout the process. If you don't have one of these, just pour it really, really slow. Drop by drop, literally.
Can you use olive oil?
I would not use olive oil. It's too flavorful. I really think like a neutral oil, grape seeds even a little flavorful. I like to use sunflower oil. You don't like sunflower? Don't use canola. Yeah. You can use olive oil. It's just going to taste like olive oil, you know. You can use, if you were willing to budge a little, you could use half olive oil and half something more neutral. You know, don't use something that's like super high in saturated fat, like coconut or palm, because it's just going to solidify. You know what I mean? Like you want. Done and done. So we'll taste it, and if we feel like it needs more lemon juice or salt, we'll add it. We'll whir it around again, stick it in a jar overnight, let the whey do its work. It will thicken a little bit more as it ferments, and then pop it in the fridge. Mix it with your buttermilk that you culture after you get out of this class and you read how to do that. And you can add some spices and make ranch dressing. Very good.
You put water in this to bring in more?
No, you're fine. Okay. As long as the vegetables, I mean, if you want to add more brine, that's fine, but you really want it to be packed tight. Okay. So if you're going to add more water to that or brine, I would add more vegetables too. As long as it's underneath the brine, it doesn't matter if it's filling the jar, you know? And you've got a good amount of brine in there. It looks good. I would just weigh it down when you get home.
Good enough.
Yeah.
So we're done?
Yeah, we're done. Yeah, thanks, y'all.
Bye. Sure had fun.
See you now.
See you.
Thank you guys. You guys did a great job.